Gigafactories aren't bottlenecked by robots. They're bottlenecked by chemistry that can't be rushed, and by minds that can't keep up. We live in an era where robots weld car frames in seconds, where AI schedules entire supply chains in real time, where factories the size of small cities have been built specifically to produce batteries for electric vehicles. So why, after billions of dollars and years of construction, do these factories take so long to reach full production? Why do early-stage gigafactories sometimes run at 60 to 70% yield for more than a year? The answer isn't a broken robot arm. The answer is a drying oven, a lithium mine, and the fundamental laws of electrochemistry. This is Tech, where the engineering story is always stranger than the press release. Here's what most people picture when they hear battery manufacturing bottleneck. They see a robot that's too slow, a machine that needs an upgrade, an automation problem that more capital spending can solve. And honestly, that assumption makes sense. We've watched automation transform car manufacturing over 50 years. Tasks that once took a skilled worker an hour now take a robot arm 4 seconds. We've seen chip fabrication become so precise that modern fabs etch features just a few nanometers wide, structures you could fit thousands of across a single human hair. So the natural conclusion feels obvious. Battery manufacturing is an automation problem. Build more robots, build faster lines, scale up. But when you look at what actually happens inside these facilities, at what the process engineers are actually fighting, the picture changes completely. Tesla broke ground on Gigafactory Nevada in 2015. By 2017, it was producing cells, but at a fraction of its intended output. The robots were installed and running. The building was standing. The equipment had passed commissioning checks, and yet the batteries weren't flowing at full speed. So what was actually holding them back? The answer isn't on the factory floor at all. It starts thousands of miles away in the ground. Before a single electrode gets coated, before a single cell gets assembled, the factory needs materials. And those materials come from some of the most geologically specific places on Earth. A single EV battery pack requires roughly 8 to 10 kilograms of lithium, around 35 kilograms of nickel, approximately 20 kilograms of manganese, and, depending on the cell chemistry, around 14 kilograms of cobalt. These aren't commodities you can order overnight. They're not interchangeable, and they don't come out of the ground ready to use. Lithium comes primarily from brine deposits in Argentina and Chile, extracted by pumping ancient underground salt water into vast evaporation ponds and waiting for the sun to do its work, and from hard rock mines in Australia. Cobalt is concentrated overwhelmingly in the Democratic Republic of Congo, a single country accounting for the majority of global supply. Nickel supply has shifted heavily toward Indonesia and the Philippines, where laterite ore deposits require energy-intensive processing to reach battery-grade purity. Supply chain researchers at institutions including Bloomberg NEF and the IVL Swedish Environmental Research Institute have documented significant lead time pressures across all 4 of these materials. Specific timelines vary by material, geography, and market conditions, but the pattern is consistent. Getting battery-grade lithium, purified to the exact electrochemical specifications a cell manufacturer actually needs, is not the same as mining lithium. It requires chemical processing, qualification testing, and verification that each batch meets the purity thresholds cell chemistry demands. That process takes time no robot can compress. The mine is not a machine you can upgrade. The geology doesn't respond to a capital expenditure plan. And when supply tightens, as it has repeatedly across lithium, cobalt, and nickel markets, the factory waits. But even once the materials arrive at the factory gate, the real physics problem begins. Inside a gigafactory, The manufacturing process has several distinct stages, and not all of them are equal. Mixing, electrode coating, drying, cell assembly, formation and aging.
The robotic steps, cutting, stacking, welding tabs, sealing cells, are genuinely fast.
Automation has made those steps impressively efficient. They are not the problem. But two steps in this process are governed not by mechanical throughput, but by physics. The first constraint is electrode drying. To make a battery electrode, you coat a thin metal foil, copper for the anode, aluminum for the cathode, with a slurry of active materials mixed with a solvent called NMP, N-methyl-2-pyrrolidone. NMP keeps the coating spreadable and uniform, but it has to be removed completely before the electrode can be used in a cell. Evaporating NMP requires sustained, carefully controlled heat, typically between 120 and 180 degrees Celsius, applied across enormous conveyor-fed ovens that can stretch the length of a football field. Research supported through DOE programs and reviewed in peer-reviewed electrochemistry literature has found that electrode drying can account for approximately 40 to 50% of a gigafactory's total energy consumption in wet process facilities. Though the precise figure varies by facility design, NMP recovery system efficiency, and production scale. 40 to 50%. Not robotic welding, not cell assembly, not lighting the building. The oven. Researchers and companies, including Maxwell Technologies, later acquired by Tesla, have worked toward what's called dry electrode technology, which would eliminate NMP entirely and remove this energy burden from the process. As of 2024, it has not yet achieved mass production at automotive scale. The wet process, with its energy-hungry ovens and NMP recovery systems, remains the industrial standard. Now, after the electrode is dried and the cell is assembled, you reach the step that surprises most people who think they understand battery manufacturing: cell formation and aging. This is where a newly assembled cell is charged and discharged for the very first time, carefully, slowly, under precise temperature control. The cell is essentially being awakened. During that first charge, a critical protective layer forms on the surface of the anode, called the solid electrolyte interphase, or SEI layer. This layer is not added by a machine. It grows from the electrochemistry of the cell itself, as lithium ions and electrolyte react at the anode surface. The SEI layer determines how the battery will perform across its entire lifespan, its capacity retention, its safety margin, its resistance to degradation. Get it wrong in formation, and no amount of downstream testing can fix it. After formation, cells go through aging, held at controlled temperatures for days or weeks, while engineers monitor for defects that only reveal themselves over time. Self-discharge rates, voltage drift, anomalies that indicate a cell that will fail in the field, not in the factory. The SEI layer forms at a rate determined by electrochemical kinetics. Formation conditions, temperature, charge rate, electrolyte composition can be optimized within limits, but there are fundamental physical boundaries to how much the process can be accelerated without compromising that protective layer. There is no robot that can substitute for the time the chemistry requires. The electrochemistry has its own schedule, and that schedule is written in physics, not in a production plan. There's one more constraint that rarely makes headlines, but shows up immediately when a Gigafactories construction team sits down with the budget. Lithium-ion cells are highly sensitive to moisture. Elevated humidity during electrode assembly or cell construction can trigger electrolyte degradation, specifically the hydrolysis of lithium salts like LiPF6, which produces corrosive byproducts, and can accelerate dendrite formation, increasing the risk of cell failure and reducing batch yield. The severity of damage depends on the duration and degree of exposure, but the consequences of poor moisture control compound quickly, and no manufacturer can afford to find out how much humidity is too much. To prevent it, the manufacturing environment must maintain dew points below -40 degrees Celsius. To put that in perspective, the Sahara Desert's driest regions regularly record dew points below -20 degrees Celsius, with extreme measurements in isolated locations reaching approximately -25 degrees or lower. A gigafactory dry room must be significantly drier than even the most extreme natural desert conditions on Earth, continuously, across hundreds of thousands of square feet, every hour of every production day. Achieving that environment requires industrial desiccant dehumidification systems of extraordinary scale. Multi-stage chillers, redundant compressors, and HVAC infrastructure that dwarfs anything in a standard manufacturing facility. Industry analysis suggests these dry room and HVAC systems can represent 20 to 30% of a gigafactory's total capital expenditure, though this varies by facility design and location. Not the electrode coating equipment, not the robotic assembly lines, the air conditioning. And when moisture control drifts above specification, the consequences are not gradual. Cells exposed to humidity above tolerance don't simply perform at reduced capacity. They risk qualification failure entirely, and the probability of failure rises sharply with the degree and duration of the excursion. The cells are scrapped. Every percentage point of yield below target represents cells that were mixed, coated, dried, assembled, formed, and aged, and then discarded. The machines ran, the energy was spent, the robots moved, and the cells still failed. This is why early-stage gigafactories, according to industry analysis and DOE program reporting, often operate at 60 to 70% yield during ramp-up phases, and why closing that gap to the 85 to 95% yield of a mature facility can take 12 months or longer of continuous process optimization. So let's bring this together. The story we tell about electric vehicle manufacturing is a story about engineering ambition. Build bigger factories, install faster robots, automate more aggressively, announce the gigawatt-hour targets, watch the batteries flow. But the actual constraints aren't mechanical, they're geological, and they're electrochemical. The lithium in the ground doesn't know your production schedule. The brine ponds in Chile evaporate on geological time, not on quarterly earnings cycles. The SEI layer on an anode forms at the rate the electrochemistry permits, not the rate a factory ramp plan demands. You can build a faster robot. You cannot build a faster ion. The NMP solvent evaporates when the heat and time are sufficient, and not before. The oven doesn't care about the delivery date. This is what the Samsung SDI Galaxy Note 7 recall in 2016 pointed toward: potential manufacturing process control issues in cell production, where pressure to accelerate ramp-up collided with the unforgiving precision requirements of lithium-ion chemistry. The specific causal mechanisms remain debated, but the incident highlighted how manufacturing precision failures in lithium-ion cells can lead to catastrophic outcomes, a lesson that applies across the industry. And it echoed what the Sony laptop battery recall a decade earlier had already signaled. In that case, metal particle contamination was identified as a key contributor to internal short circuits. Both recalls underscored the critical importance of manufacturing process control in battery production, and how the failure modes live in the parts of the process that robots cannot simply be upgraded to fix. The robots were never the problem. The problem was always the parts of the process that robots cannot touch. This matters beyond any single factory or any single product recall. Meeting the battery production targets that climate modeling says we need, for EVs, for grid storage, for the broader energy transition, requires not just building more gigafactories. It requires solving the constraints inside them. That means investing in raw material refining infrastructure, not just opening new mines, but building the chemical processing capacity to turn raw ore into battery-grade material at the speed the factories need. It means advancing dry electrode technology to the point where it can replace NMP-based coating at industrial scale, eliminating the step that currently consumes a dominant share of a gigafactory's electricity.
And it means accepting that cell formation and aging, the step that occupies a quarter to 40% of factory floor space, will remain constrained by electrochemistry for the foreseeable future. That's not a failure of engineering ambition. It's a boundary set by physics. Engineering ambition built the gigafactories. Geology and physics set the pace inside them. These factories remind us that some production problems live below the floor plan. In the mine, in the molecule, in the dew point reading at 3 in the morning. But other battery chemistries, sodium-ion, solid-state, alternative cathode architectures, are still waiting to prove whether they can rewrite these constraints at scale. I'm here to help you know the engineering behind the energy transition. What do you think is the hardest bottleneck to crack? The mines, the NMP ovens, or the formation chambers? Drop your answer in the comments. See you at the next Electrode.